Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Q&A. So the question is, how do you recommend balancing your practicing sessions throughout the day between fundamentals, repertoire, excerpts, etc.? So first off, I have three primary recommendations in response to this question. The first one is that we set up our practice schedule with a clear understanding of what our optimal intentions for the practice are and our optimal outcomes, okay? And those are kind of two different things. We'll get into it a little bit more later. Secondly, I highly recommend embracing and exercising a diverse and varied approach to creating your practice and training sessions. So you're not always using the same exact kind of order of events. First tone, then technique, then etudes, and finally your repertoire. You're actually using a variety of methods and trying a variety of methods out constantly. And thirdly, I recommend creating practice sessions that actually are customized according to where you are in your learning phase. So are you a beginner, an intermediate? Are you professional? Where you are in your project phase. Are you at the beginning of learning a piece? Are you at the beginning of learning a new skill? Did you just finish and now you're about to kind of enjoy that and sort of replay some of the music and maybe start something new? And where you are in your biological energy phase. And this is something I'm really excited to talk more about in a future Q&A. So those are my three recommendations. Now let's break those down a little bit and look at some strategies and tools for actually accomplishing them. So what are some optimal intentions and outcomes for our practice sessions? I made a little list here, which I think includes some very important main concepts. The first one is to create a practice session that keeps us engaged, because when we are engaged, we are enjoying ourselves. The second one is to create a practice session that keeps us motivated. And I don't mean just sort of generically motivated in our practice, but like motivated in the minute we're practicing, motivated in the 10-minute chunk, motivated at the end of our practice to come back 2 hours later and continue, motivated by the end of the week instead of burned out. The third one is pretty obvious, and that is something that will keep us growing in our practice. So this is either developing our technical skills, which is a pretty clear reason for practicing, but also developing our artistic skills and our artistic voice, and actually using the practice time and breaking it down and creating a schedule where we deliberately are importing sections into the practice where we're conscientiously working on developing our artistic voice, our skills as an artist. The fourth one is to include time into your practice and training schedules that is used specifically for exploring and discovering. That is what brought us to music in the first place, that excitement of like picking up the instrument and kind of going, oh, what does this key do? And how does it make a sound? And how can I make that sound better? And so the idea is like to keep that alive and in your practice and a part of your practice all the time. And it can be a 10-minute block for exploration and discovery. It can just be the way you move through every single one of your blocks with that intention to be exploring and discovering. And next I have realizing success. And again, this is pretty clear. This is like, yeah, we're going to learn this piece. We're going to be able to play these scales as quickly, but making sure that we actually realize success in little ways during every single one of our practice hours. So this requires actually creating micro goals for the hour, for the task, for the day, for the week, in a way that's attainable and broken down and laid out to help us in succession reach what is our primary and end goal. So integrating these concepts into our practice as part of our intention for the practice and with a vision for how it influences the outcome of our practice is really important. Let's go next to my recommendation that we use diverse, flexible, and varied approaches to practicing. Okay, so first I'd like to talk a little bit about how I was taught. I started the flute when I was in 5th grade, and I was taught that the first part of my practice should be some kind of a warm-up where I just sort of play the instrument a little bit, and that I should then move into my skills, and then I should move into my study book, and then into my piece. Of course, that began to develop over time, and then it became long tones, flexibility exercises, diminuendos, vibrato, so all aspects of sort of fundamentals, which is what this question is about, and then aspects of repertoire. So one of the things I recommend is to diversify your training model. Try everything out. That can be going in with no plan at all. I'm just going to practice 3 hours today, and journaling about how that works for you. And then maybe the next week or the next day, you decide you're going to try a plan where you're alternating hour blocks, or where you're alternating where in the day you put your hour blocks. Or maybe you're working with 2-hour blocks and 1 hour off and 1 hour back on. But the idea is that you diversify your plan and that you look into a lot of different models for actually creating training strategies that are helpful and successful. Secondly, I recommend flexing your training plans. This means being very present in the process and maybe even journaling. So if you create a plan and it says for 10 minutes I'm going to do this, for 15 I'll do this, for 15 I'll do this, and you do that, let's say a week in advance or day in advance for the entire chunk of time that you're creating a plan for, and then you find on that day or within that hour that you're just not liking it, cross it off or stick to it. Try both things. Note what you didn't like about it. Keep track so that you are learning what works for you and that you're better able to know how to keep flexing things and changing things so that you can create a more customized approach to your practice. Next, and this is related, and that is to create a varied plan. So try not to stick to the same type of training every day. You know, one day of training can be using a plan where you're breaking things down into 10-minute segments, then moving maybe to 30 and 15-minute segments, or maybe that entire day is technique. Or maybe the next day it's repertoire mixed with technique. Maybe the third day you don't practice. So the idea is that you are creating training plans that are customized for where you are in your learning cycle in terms of how much time you're practicing. Are you a beginner? Are you working on a new skill? Are you intermediate? Are you a college student? Are you a professional? And also your daily energy cycle. And you're keeping everything flexed. You're trying different things out. Things are varied. You're taking notes. And you're always alternating to keep that engagement, that motivation, and that ability to attain your goals up and happening with your training schedule. So how does this apply to the question of balancing fundamentals and repertoire? So a couple of things that I want to talk about is different ways of actually approaching how you organize your practice time in terms of fundamentals and repertoire. One thing to consider is whether your training is going to be time-based, topic-based, or outcome-based. So the time-based version is I'm going to break down my hour, for example, into 3 10s and 2 15s. I'm going to break down my second hour into 2 15s and 1 30, and my third hour will be 2 30-minute chunks. So that's very time-based. Topic-based, which is a really fun way to organize your practice, is to say take a topic like tone or a topic like fast fingers, and instead of just doing fundamental work on tone where you're doing long tones and interval training, or fundamental work like scales on finger technique, what you end up doing is you take the topic of tone and you cross over into all your repertoire. So for example, you might do a quick little tone warm-up, and then maybe you move into the Eber concerto and you do all the slow lyrical sections, and then maybe you move into your excerpts and you practice tone-related topics that are in your excerpts. So you're taking the topic and you're working across the fundamentals, the repertoire, and the excerpts, and you're organizing them in a different way. Outcome-based organization of training means that you're just focusing on, this is what I want to get done today. Today I want to completely run through this piece. It's not dependent on time. It's not dependent on a topic like tone, finger technique, body alignment. It's basically, here's what I want to accomplish today. So another way to keep our practice varied and flexible is to alternate time increments. And I already talked a little bit about that. But this is a really important thing to do and try a lot of different ways of doing, because it is going to be the thing that shows you most what works best for you. A lot of us walk into our practice sessions kind of like with a pile of music, and this is what I need to get done today, and we just start to go into flow and we move through things, and we just sort of follow the energy wave and work according to what we feel like, and if we don't feel like, we might push through it, etc. But practicing with very specific time increments can be very exciting. It actually like puts a fire under the engagement. It puts a fire under the motivation, because you might be doing something that you really enjoy in the little 10-minute chunk that you've given to it, and your little timer goes off and you're supposed to move on to your next 10-minute chunk. And what you find is like you have this choice. Do I keep enjoying this and use my energy here, and then later you might not have energy for the next thing? Or do I stop and commit to the time increment that I've set and now take all that energy and put it into the next thing? Studies have shown that like short periods of concentrated time on different topics actually has a better outcome than sort of immersing yourself. So I'd say balancing the two is really important. And those time increments can be, again, like 3 10-minute slots and then 2 15s. Or maybe later in the day you find that you would like for one of your hours to just be a complete hour of unstructured playtime. The increments can include unstructured playtime, discovery, sight reading, tone, topic-based, a fundamental skill, a brand new skill, some of your excerpts, running all of your music, just a lot of different ways of mixing and matching so that your training is engaging and motivational and keeps you wanting to practice. Another recommendation for how to organize and vary your practice is to alternate the order of your practice. So again, a lot of us have been taught to do sort of the grunt work first and then the dessert later. Well, there is a lot of benefit to actually starting your day off with your repertoire. And I don't mean every day, but if you've been practicing a lot and you're in great shape and you even were playing the night before, the next morning you could start off with just a little warm-up, sort of say hello to your instrument, and then why not make the first hour be all about your repertoire? Maybe you run something completely, or maybe you sight read, maybe you put only the runs of all of your pieces together in the first hour, and you just kind of move through all your music and tap into all those runs. So alternating your order of practice is a great way to bring diversity into your training. And I'd like to touch on another technique that I think is really helpful, and that is organizing your practice horizontally. So what this means is, instead of thinking of what you're going to do during the day, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and how you're organizing this day and this day and this day, actually thinking about how you're organizing your practice through the week horizontally. So for example, let's say you're going to develop your skill with trills. Instead of spending 1 hour or 45 minutes or 30 minutes on trills on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, what you might do is just take 10 minutes per day and move across the week this way in terms of adding up your time and seeing if you're getting in the amount of time that you'd like to get in. This can be a fun way to practice. It brings about a lot of improvement. Studies have shown that if you're giving your brains a skill to develop and you take a break and you actually sleep in the break cycle, come back and do it again the next day, and then the following day, that actually having those intermittent practice sessions on the skill brings about better skill development and faster skill development. And so to sort of wrap up the importance of using a diverse and varied training schedule approach, one of the best things about it is that it's constantly evolving. It's meeting you where you're at. It's working for you. It's customized. You're taking notes and you're developing a training schedule that you can see is actually bearing the fruit that you would like for it to bear or not. And you are the one who is able to make the changes that you need to make that practice and training model work best for you. Finally, my third recommendation was that we create practice and training plans that are customized according to cycles and phases. And the 3 cycles and phases that I mentioned are the learning phase you're in. So if you're a beginner, intermediate, a college student, a professor, a professional performer, a gigging artist, we know what learning phase are you in? And secondly, what project phase are you in? Are you at the beginning of establishing new skills? Are you developing repertoire for a concert and you're at the very beginning of learning the entire thing? Or are you at the end of that project phase or somewhere in the middle? And finally, there are our biological energy cycles. And so this is like the circadian rhythm of the day. Are you a morning person, a nighttime person? What part of the day are you most creative in? What part of the day do you have the most energy in? What part of the day do you find yourself best at thinking, reading, organizing, maybe being quiet, but getting a lot of mental work done? And when do you like to rest and recover? And being really aware of your circadian rhythm and organizing your practice according to that daily cycle. And then there's a weekly cycle as well. What part of the week are you most creative in, or are you most exhausted in? And finally, there's your monthly cycle. So adjusting your training so that you keep in mind like the part of the month that you're most creative in, or even just looking at your calendar, when are you most busy, when are you less busy? When will you be able to get, X, Y, and Z done, looking ahead at the cycle of your month? So in summary, in terms of what I recommend for balancing aspects of practice like fundamentals, repertoire, excerpts, I would say the first thing is to know what your most optimal intentions and outcomes are. Use a variety of models and methods, take notes, mix it up, find out what works best for you. Stay engaged, stay motivated, keep achieving your goals, and finally create customized plans that work according to the phases that you're in, the project phases, the learning phases, and also your biological energy phases. So I decided to create a part 2 video in response to the question regarding balancing fundamentals and repertoire in our practice. I'm going to go through a training plan cover sheet that outlines everything I talked about in video number 1, and also go through an example of what a weekly training log would look like. Both of these filled out examples are located on my website under the Masterclasses page, as well as blank copies for you to print off, copy, use in your teaching, and use in your own practice training strategies. So let's take a look at what this would look like on paper. You can see that this is a training plan cover sheet. Here in this first section, you can see that I've written training intentions, outcomes. Create a training plan that keeps you, and then like we talked about, engaged, motivated, growing in skill and artistic development, exploring and discovering, realizing success, reaching your micro and macro goals, and there are spaces to put other types of intentions and outcomes. Next, we have training plans. We talked about utilizing diverse, flexible, varied approaches, discovering what works best for us, journaling and noting, and creating and exploring varied types of plans. So here I've listed a variety of types of plans. We have a week in advance plan, a day in advance plan, a day of plan, no plan, so unstructured, time-based, topic-based, outcome-based, and then days where we just do fundamentals, days where we do only repertoire, days off, score study and listening days, and alternating time increments like 5, 10, 15-minute blocks of time, alternating the order of training elements, so not just doing fundamentals first every day and then repertoire second, for example, intentional horizontal planning, intentional vertical planning, and then rotating practice boxes. And using this as a training plan cover sheet organizer for the week, I've gone ahead and decided I'm going to create a week in advance plan. I'm going to incorporate days off. I'm going to be alternating the order of my training elements. I'm going to use intentional horizontal planning. I'm going to use intentional vertical planning. And here I've created an affirmations box. This is where we include affirming statements that we want to meditate on and make be a part of our awareness all throughout the week. These are usually in the first person and present tense. So I've picked 2. I am in the process of learning what training works best for me, and I stay present and in tune with my biological energy phases. Next, I've included a goals box. This includes my micro and macro goals and what I would like to focus on and achieve this week or perhaps even this month. So in the example that I've created, I've written that I'm going to draft the Je Levé Chantelinos. I'm going to stick to the training segments I've created in my training plan. I'm going to get my scales up to 160 per beat, and I'm going to draft and develop the excerpts Leonora, Mendelssohn, and Fawn. And finally, there's a suggested topics box. So I'm going to read through this box and select the items that I really want to focus on the most this week. I've selected, for an example, tone color, dynamics, the virtuosic flutist book, articulation, body alignment, making sure I'm incorporating practice breaks and rest, making sure I'm incorporating unstructured practice time, score study, repertoire, drafting, reviewing, running and polishing my repertoire, music listening, video recording, and then there are these slots for adding additional items, which in this case I added rhythmic, sight read, and improvise. Now let's take a peek at what a training log for the week might look like. I've included 6 days on this log, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Personally, I like to take at least a day off every week, which is why there isn't a 7th day here. For fun, I've created a key, so M for motivating, F for fun, G for grunt work, C for creative, NS for new skills, RS for review skills, and I'm kind of looking up and making sure that I'm tapping into covering all these things. You can also take that key and sort of drag those letters down by each item. You can see that I've created a schedule that goes by the hour block 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each hour is divided into segments of concentrated work time. So on day 1, I have 20 minutes, 10 minutes, a couple more 10-minute segments, 2 20-minute segments, 2 10-minute segments, 2 15s, and a 30. Several times throughout the week, I'll have a complete 60-minute block that is not subdivided, or I may divide my hour into 2 30-minute segments. I've uploaded this sheet and the training plan cover sheet in a PDF format on my website. Okay, so let's take a peek at how I handle fundamentals and repertoire. The 2 main repertoire items for this week of training are 3 excerpts and the Je Levé Chantelinos. In working with the Je Levé, I've put several sections of the Je Levé into my first hours. These are indicated by little orange dots. You'll see I have 20 minutes in this hour, 10 minutes in this hour, 20 in this, 30 in this, 50 minutes of Je Levé work over here, 1 hour of Je Levé work over here, etc. After adding up all the Je Levé times for the week, my total is 5 hours and 50 minutes. This is a great example of horizontal planning. You can see that I'm thinking about how I'm placing my Je Levé throughout the week, moving in this direction. My warm-ups and fundamentals are organized in a variety of ways. I have random warm-ups, I have specific warm-ups that are according to topic, and I have a pre-made list of warm-ups titled A and B. I also list my warm-ups specifically as scales and arpeggios, and you can see that these are spread throughout the week as well. The third way I tackle fundamentals and warm-ups is by topic, so I've decided to focus on articulation and tone, and you'll see that I've created a green set of articulation topics and a pink one. You can see in this example that everything marked by green markers is related to articulation. This is the challenging articulation passage from Mendelssohn Symphony No. 4. This is the challenging articulation passage from Je Levé's Chantelinos, page 6. And here we have Leonora Overture. In the topic listed as pink tone, I have an excerpt from the virtuosic flutist that deals with tone color. I also have the excerpt Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun, transposed in different keys, and again from the virtuosic flutist. And here's an example of how I take the topic of tone and isolate a challenging tone section in Je Levé's Chantelinos. So looking back on the way I organized my training plan for the week, I decided to add up the time I spent on each topic. For the Je Levé Chantelinos, I scheduled 5 hours and 50 minutes. Unstructured playtime totaled 4 hours and 45 minutes. My excerpts totaled 45 minutes. The green articulation topic, which included excerpts and repertoire, totaled 50 minutes, and so did the pink one, which was focused on tone. Under scales and arpeggios, there was 1 hour and 5 minutes allotted. Warm-up A received 1 hour. Warm-up B received 45 minutes. The random warm-up totaled 35 minutes. Score study totaled 2 hours. And video and listening totaled 1 hour. Keep in mind that 4 hours and 45 minutes of all of this is unstructured practice time. In each of those breaks that I designated for unstructured practice time, I made a mini list of things that I did want to try and cover. In this example, we have new music, sight reading, and running through repertoire. Here's a 1 hour unstructured block of time where my intention is to cover repertoire, go over topics, and assess where I stand by this point in the week. My total practice time for the week is 19 and a half hours.